I'm Naima. I am the director of Sex Talk, which is a documentary focused on normalizing conversations around sex and pleasure in the Black community. A lot of the conversations I see around sex are either really negative and repressive or sensationalized and inauthentic.
These sexuality conversations are so much more encompassing than just intercourse, and that's what people really get wrong.
I knew specifically for myself, time that I really needed sex ed the most was during high school. There are all of these moments in my life, many of them traumatic, that could have been so easily prevented if anybody had just been willing to be honest with me about sex.
If the parents are telling them you shouldn't be having sex and the reality is they are having sex, who do they go to? Who are they getting their information from?
I came out of the tradition of a highly restrictive church group. We were raised in a tradition where you don't have sex before you get married to someone. You're also taught that the moment you get married and you find your quote unquote person, everything should be right, and it's like flipping a switch and everything's gonna work right. And reality is that is like the furthest thing from the truth. Like, it doesn't work that way.
There are lots and lots and lots of messages and circumstances that didn't put pleasure easily on my path. It was really normal, not only for my body to not feel good, but it was normal to live a life that doesn't feel good.
Your experiences are shaped by all of the intersecting points of how you exist in this world. If you're a woman, if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, if you're disabled, if you're fat, if you're Black, if you're poor, all of that influences how your sexual experiences and your ability to access pleasure are shaped.
What I hear when it comes to Blackness and intersections of different identities is the limits that we tend to put on ourselves from just the internalized patriarchal misogynoir and Christianity. Pick one.
As we are talking about sexual liberation, Black sexual liberation, I think that so much too is liberation from tolerating pain, not being able to seek support, not being able to identify what that is.
If you are in touch with your pleasure, it adds to your level of confidence in your own body, and it helps you assert when things ain't right. We don't think about how health and pleasure are linked.
I don't just test people and give them their results. We actually have a counseling session. But I've noticed that my young women, they don't feel like they have the power to say no. So we are the ones who end up facing the consequences of not standing up for ourselves.
For so long that I thought that sex was to be done to a partner rather than being something for a person or in collaboration with.
When they talk about marriage in the church, they don't talk all about consent. A lot of hetero men, the messaging you get is not really about your partner's satisfaction, your partner's pleasure. It's about what makes you look good. It's about conquest a lot of times, and we're told this is how we have to be, but there's not a lot of competing messaging.
There's a long way to go, and I definitely recognize differences in the way that some people respond to my work based on their own adherence to traditionalism and the cultures that create that. That makes it so much harder for Black women, especially, being held to these outrageous standards.
We are so sexualized, but people don't want to talk about it when it matters. It's a normal part of life.
I spent a really long time feeling disappointed that I had done all the right things and it didn't get me the things that I wanted out of life. And yet people were so proud of me. I had to choose that not only was I willing to fight for my pleasure, but I had to believe that I was deserving.
We have to reframe from what a baseline understanding of human sexuality as a social determinant of health can look like and include the people that are normally left out of that conversation. It's their birthright, just like it's everybody else's.
In the sexuality space and in the Black space, there's so much that the mainstream space isn't showing us. They're not showing that Black people have all these wealth of experiences. It's so narrow.
The documentary, the intention there is to help us invite that curiosity and dialogue among our circles and our peers that draws the conversation inward rather than it being outward, and everybody trying to meet these expectations being set by people who don't quite look like us or don't have the same shared experience.
You know that quote, everything in the world is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. There's so much legislation and even cultural things that we don't even know are meant and designed and curated specifically to help oppress or repress the expression and connection to human sexuality. And so what we're doing is providing the tools and information for people to build who they want to be when it comes to their sexuality. And so to me, that's sexual liberation.
Being able to identify your biases and sort of think through where they might have come from and not just give in to them like there's some natural thing that just occurs. But I think that it's something we should all be working towards.
I don't think we recognize how often people actually are in service to our pleasure, but it does take that vulnerable leap of naming, I want. Everyone on all sides are suffering if we don't actually have the opportunity to know deeply what it means to explore our feelings, because all of our emotions will give us the information we need for not just pleasure, but liberation on the other side.